You're telling me those flimsy bipeds without scales, claws, or natural armor are the most feared warriors in the quadrant? Get real. Ambassador Cathraz flicked his barbed tail dismissively, splattering drops of his celebratory drink across the embassy lounge. Captain Valorian Nexus of the Galactic Federation Diplomatic Corps dabbed the purple liquid from her uniform with practiced patience. After 15 stellar cycles as the Federation's liaison to newly discovered species, she'd developed a hide thicker than a Brontarian sandbeast. "That's precisely what I'm telling you," she replied, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a gesture her species used to indicate deadly seriousness. "The humans have been quarantined behind a military blockade for the past 70 cycles for a reason. But they're so squishy." Cathraz's mandibles clicked in the equivalent of a snicker. "My youngest spawn could tear one apart with their nursery claws. That's why you weren't informed of the containment directive until your species achieved level 3 space travel. The Federation Council determined your people weren't ready for the truth." Cathraz rose to his full 3-meter height, poison sacs inflating along his neck ridge. "Not ready? We've conquered 3 solar systems." "Uninhabited systems," Valorian corrected gently. "Trust me, there's a difference between terraforming empty planets and facing a human battalion." "Preposterous! Their homeworld isn't even in a strategic location. They have no access to rare minerals, no evolutionary advantages. They're practically hairless mammals with delusions of grandeur." Valorian sighed, all 4 eyes closing simultaneously. "I see we're going to need a demonstration. Follow me to the historical archives." The archive chamber hummed with the soft blue glow of holographic data streams. Valorian guided her skeptical companion to a private viewing pod. "Computer, access historical file H1, classification, xenobiological threat assessment, authorization, Nexus Omega-7. The pod's interior darkened, then illuminated with a 3-dimensional star map. "What you're seeing is the known galaxy approximately 300 cycles ago," Valorian explained. "Note the distribution of sentient species." Cathraz studied the map with the keen eyes of a natural predator. 273 spacefaring civilizations, so? Now watch what happens when we add humanity to the equation. A small blue dot appeared in an unremarkable spiral arm of a thoroughly average galaxy. Computer advanced timeline, standard progression. The star map shifted, civilizations expanding their territories in a natural pattern of growth and occasional conflict. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, the blue dot began to pulse. "Cycle 2738, first contact between humans and the Arcturian Empire," narrated the computer. "The Arcturians!" Cathraz's antennae twitched with recognition. "Weren't they the silicon-based hive mind that controlled half the Orion Spur?" "Precisely." Valorian's tone was grim. "An empire that had stood for 15,000 cycles. Technological marvels. Strategists beyond compare. What happened to them? I've never encountered their diplomatic—" Cathraz fell silent as the hologram showed the blue pulse suddenly expand, engulfing the entire Arcturian territory in less than a stellar cycle. "The First Galactic War lasted exactly 9 standard months," Valorian continued. "The Arcturians detected a human mining vessel near their territory, attempted to capture it for study, and— 9 months? Cathraz's voice had lost its earlier arrogance. "That's impossible. No species could defeat the Arcturians that quickly. The humans call it Pearl Harbor Syndrome. Apparently, if you surprise them with an attack, they don't just retaliate. They eliminate what they perceive as an existential threat with extreme prejudice. But the Arcturians had planet-cracking technology, quantum phase shields, an army of billions. And the humans had something far more dangerous." Valorian tapped the control panel. "Computer, display documentary footage. Battle of Arcturus Prime." The footage was grainy, clearly captured from a distance by a neutral observation vessel. A massive Arcturian dreadnought, a ship the size of a small moon, hung in space, surrounded by a defensive fleet of thousands. Approaching it was a single human vessel, so small it was barely visible against the backdrop of stars. "This is absurd," Cathraz scoffed. "One ship against the Arcturian flagship? This must be propaganda." "Just watch." The human vessel accelerated suddenly, not toward the dreadnought, but into a seemingly random vector. "They're retreating? Smart move, at least." Valorian said nothing. Then, without warning, the human ship vanished. 1 second later, it reappeared, inside the Arcturian dreadnought's shield perimeter. 2 seconds later, the dreadnought exploded from within, taking out most of its support fleet in the blast wave. Cathraz's exoskeleton paled to a sickly yellow. That's impossible. No species has mastered short-range precision FTL jumps." The energy requirements alone would... The humans call it a hyperspace microjump. Apparently, they developed it specifically for this battle after studying Arcturian shield frequencies for all of 3 days. 3 days to counter technology that took the Arcturians millennia to perfect? That's humanity for you. Valorian's upper eyes narrowed. They don't think like other species. While we spend generations perfecting a technology, they'll cobble together a deadly effective countermeasure using spare parts and what they call duct tape. Surely this was an isolated incident. A lucky strike? Computer, advanced timeline. Display expansion pattern alpha. The star map resumed its movement. The blue pulse that represented humanity began to spread rapidly, not in the usual pattern of colonial expansion, but in strange, unpredictable bursts. After defeating the Arcturians, humanity was approached by the Galactic Council of that era with an offer of membership, Valorian continued. They accepted, but with conditions. They wanted access to all technological databases, unrestricted trade rights, and the freedom to establish colonies anywhere outside existing territories. And the Council agreed? Cathraz sounded incredulous. After witnessing what happened to the Arcturians? Absolutely. The timeline continued its progression. For several decades, the blue pulse remained relatively contained, expanding slowly along traditional colonial patterns. See? They settled down, became civilized. Cathraz sounded relieved. That's what everyone thought, until the Proxima incident. The hologram shifted to display a binary star system with several habitable planets. Proxima Centauri was one of humanity's first extrasolar colonies, Valorian explained. Small population, mostly researchers and their families. The Jakari Empire, here, she pointed to a red zone several light years distant, had been experiencing internal conflicts. A rogue Jakari warlord decided an easy victory over a human outpost would solidify his political position. Logical strategy, Cathraz nodded. Quick victory, minimal losses, maximum propaganda value. That's exactly what the warlord thought. His fleet arrived at Proxima, expecting minimal resistance from a scientific outpost. What they found instead was... Valorian paused. Computer, display Proxima Defense Force, Engagement Delta. The hologram shifted to show what appeared to be ordinary human civilians, researchers, engineers, even what looked like their juvenile offspring, arming themselves with a hodgepodge of weapons, some clearly improvised from scientific equipment. What are they doing? Cathraz asked, leaning closer to the display. Those aren't soldiers. They're not even wearing proper armor. That's what the Jakari thought too. They landed a contingent of elite troops, expecting immediate surrender. The footage continued. The humans, instead of cowering or attempting to negotiate, immediately launched a coordinated guerrilla campaign against the vastly superior Jakari forces. The recordings showed humans of all ages setting traps, creating improvised explosive devices, and even engaging in hand-to-hand combat with armored Jakari warriors twice their size. This is unexpected, Cathraz admitted, his earlier skepticism fading. But surely they were eventually overwhelmed by superior numbers and technology? That would be the logical outcome, Valorian agreed. If humanity followed the same logic as the rest of us. Computer, display Sol system, military response alpha. The hologram shifted back to the star map, focusing on Earth, humanity's homeworld. As they watched, thousands of vessels of all shapes and sizes began launching from planets, moons, and space stations throughout the system. What you're seeing is humanity's response to the news of the Proxima attack, Valorian explained. Notice anything unusual? Cathraz studied the chaotic launch pattern. These aren't military formations. They're completely disorganized. Mining vessels, scientific ships, private transports, are those civilian craft? Every ship capable of reaching Proxima was immediately retrofitted for combat. Miners became troop transports. Research vessels became improvised weapon platforms. Private yachts carried special forces teams. But this is madness. No species commits its entire industrial and civilian infrastructure to a military response. The economic damage alone would... The humans have a concept they call total war, Valorian interrupted. When threatened, they don't calculate economic trade-offs or diplomatic consequences. They simply commit everything they have to the fight. The hologram showed the ragtag human fleet arriving at Proxima and engaging the Jakari forces. Despite their technological disadvantage, the humans fought with a ferocity that bordered on suicidal. Ships deliberately ramming Jakari cruisers, civilian vessels flying directly into weapons fire to provide cover for other craft. This isn't warfare. Cathraz whispered, his earlier bravado completely gone. This is insanity. The Jakari thought so too. They retreated after losing half their fleet, expecting the humans to celebrate their victory and return to normal operations. A reasonable assumption, and completely wrong. Computer, display Jakari Empire, human counteroffensive. The star map zoomed out to show the entire Jakari territory. The blue pulse that represented humanity suddenly surged forward, not just toward the warlord's holdings, but toward the entire Jakari civilization. The humans didn't stop after defending Proxima, Valorian continued. They declared war on the entire Jakari Empire, even though the central government had officially disavowed the warlord's actions. But that's disproportionate, irrational? Welcome to humanity's approach to conflict. They have a saying, the best defense is a good offense. Once provoked, they don't simply respond to the immediate threat. They eliminate any possibility of future threats from the same source. The hologram showed the systematic dismantling of the once mighty Jakari Empire over the course of just 2 stellar cycles. Planet after planet fell to the human onslaught, not through superior technology, but through what appeared to be sheer, relentless determination. The Federation had to intervene, Valorian said, her voice solemn. Not to protect the Jakari, but to protect humanity from itself. The resource drain of their total war approach was pushing their civilization toward collapse, even as they continued to defeat the Jakari at every turn. They would destroy themselves to destroy their enemy. Cathraz couldn't hide his shock. What evolutionary advantage could possibly come from such behavior? That's the question that has puzzled xenobiologists for centuries. Computer, display Human Evolutionary Combat Assessment Section 3. The hologram shifted to show a series of images from Earth's prehistoric past. Early humans, physically unimpressive compared to the megafauna surrounding them. Somehow not just surviving but thriving. Humans evolved on a death world, Valorian explained. Not in the traditional sense of extreme environments or toxic atmospheres, but something perhaps more dangerous. A world of constant, unrelenting competition. All worlds have evolutionary competition, Cathraz objected. Not like Earth. Most intelligent species evolve as either the dominant predator or as specialized defensive specialists, like your people, with your natural armor and venom. This creates evolutionary stability. You hunted or you defended, and your biology optimized accordingly. And humans didn't follow this pattern. Humans evolved as persistence predators, neither the strongest nor the fastest. They survived by simply not stopping. They would chase prey animals that could easily outrun them for hours, even days, until the stronger, faster creature collapsed from exhaustion. The hologram showed primitive humans tracking large prey across vast distances, their bodies covered in sweat. Is that liquid some kind of toxin they secrete? Cathraz asked, indicating the sweating humans. No, that's their cooling system. Humans can regulate their body temperature through liquid evaporation, allowing them to remain physically active long after most species would overheat. Inefficient design, Cathraz scoffed, though with less conviction than before. Perhaps, but combined with their endurance and bizarre psychological makeup, it made them nature's perfect marathon hunters, and they've applied the same principles to warfare. They don't need to be the strongest or have the best technology. They just need to outlast you. The hologram shifted again, showing historical footage from Earth's pre-space history. Scenes of human warfare through the ages played out in rapid succession. Primitive tribes with stone weapons, armored warriors on horseback, massive formations of soldiers with increasingly sophisticated weapons. Notice anything consistent across these disparate time periods? Valorian asked. Cathraz studied the images carefully. They always seem to be fighting. Against nature, against each other. Is there any period in their history when they weren't at war? Very brief interludes. The humans call them peacetime, but historically these periods were merely preparation for the next conflict. Their technology, their social structures, even their entertainment, all shaped by warfare. But that's no way for a sentient species to advance. The energy wasted on conflict alone would logically prevent technological advancement? That's what every xenosociologist thought too. Yet somehow warfare accelerated their development. Computer, display human technological advancement timeline. A new chart appeared, showing the exponential curve of human technological progress alongside major conflicts. Every significant leap in human technology corresponds with a period of warfare, Valorian explained. Their first space launch capabilities? developed from military ballistic missile technology. They're faster than light travel? Originally designed to give their warships tactical advantages, medical advances, agricultural improvements, even their entertainment technology, all have roots in military applications. This defies all rational models of societal development, Cathraz muttered. Which is exactly why the Federation established the quarantine after the Jakari incident. Humanity isn't just dangerous because of what they can do. They're dangerous because they're unpredictable. They don't optimize for survival or comfort or technological harmony. They optimize for winning, whatever the cost. The viewing pod's lights gradually returned to normal levels as the historical program concluded. Cathraz remained silent, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. So now you understand why we maintain the quarantine, Valorian said softly. Not out of fear precisely, but out of respect for their particular evolutionary path. But I still don't understand why they're considered the most dangerous, Cathraz finally responded. Yes, they're persistent and surprisingly militaristic for such physically unimposing creatures. But surely the Draconis with their plasma breath or the Xolotl with their hive mind capabilities present greater threats? Valorian actually laughed, a sound Cathraz had never heard from the typically stoic diplomat. You still don't get it, do you? Computer, display first contact protocol, humanity. A new hologram appeared, showing a massive fleet of Federation vessels surrounding the Sol system in an impressive display of military might. This was the Federation's approach when humanity first achieved faster-than-light capability, Valorian explained. Standard protocol for potentially aggressive species. Show overwhelming force to establish peaceful relations from a position of strength. Sensible approach, Cathraz agreed. The humans called it, and this term has since entered diplomatic lexicon, a dick move. A what? Their exact words upon opening communications were, "That's a lot of firepower for a welcoming committee. Either you're compensating for something, or you're making the biggest mistake of your lives." They threatened the entire Federation fleet? With their primitive technology? Oh, it gets better. When informed that the display was standard protocol and meant no harm, their response was to immediately begin broadcasting all their fictional entertainment about alien invasions throughout the fleet. I don't understand. Valorian sighed. The humans had created thousands of fictional scenarios about first contact with alien civilizations. And in the majority of these scenarios, they, the physically weaker, technologically inferior species, somehow defeated the technologically advanced aliens through what they called plucky determination and thinking outside the box. But those are just stories. That's what the Federation admirals thought too. Then the humans casually mentioned that they had preemptively designed their FTL drive systems with a self-destruct capability that would create a cascading reaction through subspace, potentially destabilizing FTL travel within several light-years. They wouldn't... The admiral in charge made the same assumption. The human representative smiled and said, and this is now legendarily studied in diplomatic training, maybe we would, maybe we wouldn't. But ask yourself this. Are we the type of species that would blow ourselves up just to take you with us? Now that you've studied our history, what do you think? Cathraz's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme distress in his species. And the Federation. The Federation withdrew the fleet and established diplomatic relations immediately, Valorian confirmed. Subsequent analysis indicated that the human FTL drives weren't actually capable of what they described. They were bluffing. But why would they claim capabilities they didn't have? The deception would eventually be discovered. Because at that moment, it worked. That's how humans think. Solve the immediate problem now. Worry about long-term consequences later. And here's the truly terrifying part. When Federation scientists later explained that the cascade effect the humans had described was theoretically impossible, do you know what they did? Cathraz's antennae drooped in dread. They developed the technology to make it possible? Within 5 years, they heard something was impossible, took it as a personal challenge, and made it reality. A reality that could have destabilized a significant portion of the galaxy if misused. That's why the quarantine was established, Cathraz realized. Not because humans are powerful now, but because of what they might become if left unchecked. Precisely. The Federation's greatest fear isn't human aggression. It's human innovation driven by perceived necessity. Given time and sufficient motivation, they can turn theoretical concepts into apocalyptic weapons with terrifying efficiency. Cathraz paced the length of the diplomatic lounge, his earlier arrogance replaced by thoughtful concern. If they're as dangerous as you say, why are we discussing lifting the quarantine now? What's changed? Valorian poured herself another drink. The quarantine was never meant to be permanent. Just a precaution until we better understood humanity's place in the galactic community. And we understand them now? After everything you've shown me? Not entirely. But we've learned two crucial things about humans in the past 70 cycles. Valorian held up one slender finger. First, isolation makes them paranoid. Their history shows that when they feel cornered or restricted, they become even more unpredictable. So the quarantine is actually making them more dangerous, Cathraz concluded. What's the second thing? They're intensely curious. And despite everything I've told you about their warlike tendencies, their primary motivation isn't conquest, it's exploration. They want to see what's out there more than they want to control it. That contradicts everything you just showed me about their history. Their psychology is complicated. Let me put it this way. Humans will fight ferociously if threatened, but their preferred state is actually peaceful coexistence, as long as that coexistence comes with exchange of ideas, technologies, and cultures. You make them sound like children, Cathraz observed. Dangerous, unpredictable children with apocalyptic capabilities. That's not entirely inaccurate. They're a young species by galactic standards. All that aggression, all that determination. It's helped them survive and advance at an unprecedented rate. But it comes with significant downsides. Like nearly destroying the Jakari over a single unauthorized attack. Exactly. But here's what gives the Federation hope. Humans learn from their mistakes. Not always quickly and often at great cost, but they do learn. Valorian tapped a control panel on the wall, bringing up a new holographic display. What am I looking at? Cathraz asked. The Human Diplomatic Corps. Notice anything unusual? Cathraz studied the images of human representatives. They appear to be elderly, at least for their species. Why would they entrust diplomacy to individuals past their physical prime? Because those individuals have experienced the consequences of conflict firsthand and are determined not to repeat past mistakes. Humans call it wisdom, the ability to recognize patterns from historical experience and avoid negative outcomes. So they're not just warriors. Far from it. They're scientists, artists, philosophers, explorers, and yes, warriors when necessary. Their greatest strength isn't their ferocity in battle, it's their adaptability, which makes them unpredictable. And invaluable potential allies, Valorian countered. Consider the Thalassian plague that ravaged the southern quadrant 30 cycles ago. Federation medical science had no answer. The pathogen adapted too quickly to conventional treatments. I remember. Millions died before it burned itself out. Well, it didn't burn itself out. The Federation secretly contacted human medical researchers, gave them samples of the pathogen, and within 2 months, they developed an effective treatment. 2 months? That's impossible by Federation standards? Yes. The humans called it a crash program. Apparently, when faced with sufficient urgency, they can temporarily suspend all other activities and focus their entire civilization's intellectual and industrial capacity on solving a single problem. That's actually terrifying, Cathraz admitted. It is, and it's why the Federation Council has voted to gradually lift the quarantine. Humanity's potential danger is outweighed by their potential contributions, if properly integrated into the larger galactic community. Which is where my species comes in, Cathraz realized. As a newly admitted Federation member, we're expected to establish diplomatic relations with these humans. Precisely. And given your species' natural resilience and defensive capabilities, the Council feels your people might be particularly well suited for initial contact. Humans respect strength, and your exoskeletons and natural weapons would command a certain instinctive respect from them, while making us less vulnerable to their aggression if negotiations turn hostile, Cathraz added shrewdly. That consideration may have factored into the Council's decision, Valorian admitted with a diplomatic smile. 3 months later, Cathraz stood nervously on the observation deck of his flagship, watching as the sleek human diplomatic vessel emerged from FTL at the designated meeting point, a neutral star system at the edge of Cathrazi space. They're early, his first officer observed, by exactly 7 minutes. A dominance display, Cathraz replied, recalling his extensive briefings on human psychological warfare. They're demonstrating the precision of their navigation systems. Should we respond in kind? No. We will proceed exactly as planned. No deviations that could be misinterpreted as aggression or weakness. The comm system chimed, indicating an incoming transmission. Cathraz took a moment to compose himself, mandibles relaxed, poison sacs deflated, tail held at the precise angle that indicated respectful alertness without submission. Open the channel. The view screen activated, revealing a human female with silver-streaked hair and lines etched into her face, signs of advanced age in their species. She wore a simple dark uniform with minimal ornamentation. "Ambassador Cathraz," she greeted him, her translator perfectly reproducing the complex clicks and whistles of his native language. "I am Admiral Gloria Winters of the United Earth Alliance. On behalf of humanity, I extend greetings and gratitude for this historic meeting." Cathraz performed the formal greeting gesture of his people, a complex series of movements that most non-Cathrazi found impossible to replicate. To his shock, the human admiral responded with a flawless execution of the same ritual. "You've studied our customs," he observed, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. The admiral smiled, a gesture Cathraz had been briefed to interpret as friendly rather than the baring of teeth it resembled. "We've had 70 years of quarantine to prepare for this moment, Ambassador. My team and I have dedicated our careers to understanding your people and the other Federation species. We're eager to demonstrate that humanity is ready for a wider role in galactic society." "Admirable dedication," Cathraz acknowledged. "Though I must admit, after reviewing your species' history, I approached this meeting with some trepidation." The Admiral's expression shifted to what the briefings had described as wry amusement. "You've seen the historical records of our conflicts with the Arcturians and Jakari, I presume." "And your internal conflicts," Cathraz confirmed. "Your species' capacity for warfare is impressive." "And concerning," the Admiral finished for him. "We understand that, Ambassador. We understand it better than anyone. That's why we've spent these decades of isolation rethinking our approach to interstellar relations. Forgive my skepticism, Admiral, but evolutionary behaviors don't change in a mere 70 cycles." "No, they don't," she agreed readily. "Humans are still persistence predators at heart. We're still capable of total war when threatened. Those instincts remain. Then how can you claim to have changed?" "Because instinct isn't destiny, Ambassador. The same determination that makes us formidable warriors also allows us to commit to peaceful cooperation with equal vigor. We've simply redirected our persistence." Cathraz considered this. "You're suggesting that your species' legendary stubbornness can be applied to maintaining peace as effectively as to waging war?" "Exactly." The Admiral's face lit up with what Cathraz recognized as enthusiasm. "In fact, I brought something to demonstrate this concept." She gestured off-screen, and a moment later, a younger human appeared, carrying what appeared to be an environmental suit designed for Cathrazi physiology. "This is a gift for you, Ambassador," Admiral Winters explained. "We noticed from Federation environmental data that your species finds the methane content of your atmosphere essential for optimal health, but Federation standard atmospheres lack sufficient concentrations for your comfort during extended diplomatic missions." Cathraz studied the suit with professional interest. "Most thoughtful, Admiral, though hardly necessary. My species can adapt to standard atmospheres for diplomatic functions." "At significant physical discomfort," the Admiral noted. "This suit recycles your natural exhalations to maintain a perfect methane balance without releasing any into the surrounding environment. It's also designed to interface with your neural pathways for a completely natural sensory experience. No feeling of wearing a suit at all." Cathraz's scientific curiosity was piqued despite his diplomatic caution. Such technology would indeed be useful, but surely this represents a significant research investment for a single diplomatic meeting. The Admiral's expression shifted to what Cathraz recognized as pride. "This isn't just for you, Ambassador. We've designed similar environmental optimization systems for every Federation species. It was our pet project during the quarantine years, a way to demonstrate that we can turn our problem-solving abilities toward making life better for others, not just developing weapons." For the first time, Cathraz began to understand what Valorian had tried to explain about humanity's potential as allies rather than threats. "Your species devoted decades of scientific research to creating comfort technologies for aliens you'd never even met?" "Among other projects, yes." The Admiral's tone was matter-of-fact. "It seemed like the best way to introduce ourselves, not with displays of military might or technological superiority, but with evidence that we've been thinking about how to make your lives better." Cathraz was momentarily speechless, a rare condition for a species with 3 separate vocal organs. "Admiral," he finally said, "I believe this meeting may be more productive than I anticipated. 6 standard months later, Ambassador Cathraz stood before the Federation Council, delivering his formal recommendation regarding humanity's petition for full membership. "Members of the Council," he began, his translator conveying the formal harmonics of his native speech pattern. "When I was first assigned to evaluate humanity's readiness for integration into our galactic community, I approached the task with significant reservations." The vast chamber was silent, representatives from 297 species waiting intently for his assessment. The historical record of human conflict is indeed troubling. Their capacity for warfare, their sometimes disproportionate responses to perceived threats, and their relentless drive to overcome obstacles regardless of established limitations, all these factors suggested caution. Several council members nodded in agreement. The quarantine had been controversial, but few disputed its necessity given humanity's history. "However," Cathraz continued, "after extensive interaction with human diplomatic, scientific, and cultural representatives, I must report that while humanity remains potentially the most dangerous warrior species in known space, this capacity is but one facet of a remarkable civilization." He activated a holographic display showing various human scientific and cultural achievements developed during their quarantine period. In just 70 cycles, a mere eye blink by our standards, humanity has redirected the same persistence, creativity, and determination that made them fearsome opponents into solving problems that have plagued our civilizations for millennia. The display showed human medical technologies that had already been adapted to treat previously incurable conditions in 12 Federation species, environmental restoration techniques that had reclaimed planets thought permanently damaged by industrial pollution, and energy generation systems that operated at efficiencies the Federation had considered theoretically impossible. "Most remarkably," Cathraz continued, "they've done this not in pursuit of dominance, but out of what they call intellectual curiosity, and the challenge of solving interesting problems." A ripple of conversation passed through the council chamber. The concept of technological development for its own sake, rather than specific need, was foreign to most Federation cultures. "I do not suggest that humanity has fundamentally changed its nature," Cathraz cautioned. "They remain capable of the same aggression and determination in warfare that led to the quarantine. But I have come to believe that this very capacity, properly channeled, makes them not just safe for integration, but potentially invaluable allies." He paused, allowing his next words to carry appropriate weight. "Humanity is indeed the galaxy's most terrifying warrior species. But they have chosen, consciously, deliberately chosen, to be more than warriors. They have chosen to be builders, healers, and explorers. They have taken the same evolutionary traits that made them apex predators on their death world, and applied them to the pursuit of knowledge and mutual benefit." Cathraz concluded with the formal recommendation phrasing. "It is therefore my assessment that humanity be granted full Federation membership, with appropriate monitoring protocols as detailed in my written report, but without the restrictions previously imposed by quarantine status." As the council members began their deliberations, Valorian approached Cathraz in the antechamber. "A powerful endorsement," she observed. "Quite different from your initial assessment." Cathraz's mandibles clicked in amusement. "I was wrong. Not about their potential danger. That remains very real. But about what it means for the rest of us." "Oh? Humans don't just fight because they enjoy it, or because they're naturally aggressive. They fight because they're pathologically protective, of themselves, yes, but also of anything they consider under their care." Cathraz gestured toward the council chamber. "If we accept them as full members, if we become their allies rather than potential threats, that same ferocity that terrified the Arcturians and destroyed the Jakari would be directed toward protecting the Federation." "And that's why you're recommending acceptance despite the risks?" "Precisely. The galaxy is vast and largely unexplored. We have no idea what threats may lurk beyond known space. Having humanity as the Federation's self-appointed guardian seems prudent." Valorian's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, that gesture of deadly seriousness. "And if they eventually decide the Federation itself is a threat to their interests?" Cathraz's exoskeleton shifted to the deep blue of solemn certainty. "Then we'd better hope we've learned enough from them by that point to survive the experience." Later that evening, after the council had voted overwhelmingly to accept Cathraz's recommendation, the ambassador found himself sharing a celebratory drink with Admiral Winters in the diplomatic lounge. "To new beginnings," the Admiral toasted, raising her glass. And old instincts redirected toward better purposes, Cathraz added, clicking his mandibles in the Cathrazi equivalent of a toast. The Admiral sipped her drink, studying the ambassador thoughtfully. You know, throughout this process, you've never seemed afraid of us. Cautious, yes, but not fearful. Why is that? Cathraz considered the question. Perhaps because I recognize something familiar in your species' approach to conflict. Oh? The Cathrazi evolved as defensive specialists, he explained, extending one armored limb. Our exoskeletons, poison glands, sensory adaptations, all designed to ensure survival in a hostile environment. We developed technology primarily as an extension of these natural defenses. While humans developed technology to compensate for our lack of natural defenses, the Admiral nodded. Two different evolutionary paths leading to similar outcomes. Similar, yet fundamentally different, Cathraz corrected. My species developed our civilization around the concept of impenetrability, perfect defense as the ideal state. Your species... He paused, searching for the right words. You developed around adaptability, the ability to become whatever was needed to overcome the current challenge. The Admiral smiled, and that terrifies most of the galaxy. With good reason. A species that can radically transform its capabilities within a single generation defies all predictive models. It's like trying to develop countermeasures against an opponent who might be completely different tomorrow than they are today. Yet you advocated for our full Federation membership. Cathraz's mandibles clicked in a pattern that indicated thoughtful amusement. Do you know what finally convinced me, Admiral? I'd be curious to hear. It was something one of your cultural attachés said during our initial meetings. I had inquired about humanity's seemingly contradictory nature, how the same species could produce both devastating weapons and remarkable healing technologies. And what did they tell you? They said, humans aren't warriors or healers by nature. We're problem solvers. Give us a problem, any problem, and we'll tear it apart until we find a solution. Sometimes the problem is an enemy that needs defeating. Sometimes it's a disease that needs curing. We apply the same obsessive determination either way. The Admiral nodded slowly. That's surprisingly insightful. Most of us don't analyze ourselves quite so clearly. It was illuminating, Cathraz agreed. It helped me understand that your species' terrifying aspects and your beneficial aspects are merely different expressions of the same fundamental trait. Our stubborn refusal to accept limitations, the Admiral suggested with a self-deprecating smile. Precisely. Most species adapt themselves to the universe. Humans expect the universe to adapt to them, and somehow, against all logic, often succeed in making it do so. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, each contemplating the strange diplomacy that had brought together two such different evolutionary paths. I have a question for you now, Admiral, Cathraz said finally, one that has puzzled me throughout our interactions. Go ahead. Given humanity's history, your remarkable achievements, your rapid technological advancement, your proven ability to defeat species far more numerous and initially more advanced than yourselves, why did you accept the quarantine at all? You could have challenged it, perhaps successfully. The Admiral's expression grew serious. That's an excellent question, Ambassador, and the answer reveals something important about humanity that many species misunderstand. Which is, we're not just persistent predators, we're social predators. From our earliest evolutionary history, our success came not just from individual determination, but from cooperation, from forming communities, from building connections between groups. But the historical record shows countless human conflicts, wars between your own factions. Yes, and that's the paradox of humanity that we ourselves struggle with. We're capable of tremendous cooperation and devastating conflict, often simultaneously, and for the same underlying reasons. Cathraz's head tilted in the gesture his species used to indicate confusion. That seems contradictory. It is contradictory. We're a walking, talking, evolutionary contradiction. Aggressive yet social, competitive yet cooperative, capable of both atrocity and sacrifice. The Admiral leaned forward. We accepted the quarantine because, despite our capacity for conflict, what we want most deeply is belonging, connection, to be part of something larger than ourselves. The Federation. Any community, really. But yes, the galactic community represented by the Federation is the ultimate expression of that desire. We could have fought the quarantine, possibly even successfully, but that would have meant isolation, being the species that others fear rather than the species that others welcome. And deep in our evolutionary psychology, isolation is a fate worse than death. Cathraz considered this. So the quarantine was, in a sense, a test of your species' priorities. Exactly. We could have responded with aggression and proved every fear about us correct. Or we could demonstrate patience and earn acceptance through merit rather than force. A 70-cycle demonstration of restraint, Cathraz marveled. Most species would consider that an unreasonable burden. We considered it an investment, the Admiral corrected. And today's vote proves it was worthwhile. Cathraz raised his drinking vessel once more. To investments in mutual understanding, then. And to contradictions, the Admiral added, touching her glass to his. May they always keep life interesting. 1 standard year later, Admiral Winters stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Federation flagship Concordia, watching as ships from dozens of member species maneuvered in formation around the massive vessel. The ship represented a new era in Federation history, the first true multi-species military and exploration vessel, with crews from 17 different civilizations serving together, and humans remarkably at its heart. Quite a sight, isn't it? Came a familiar voice behind her. She turned to find Ambassador Cathraz approaching, his environment suit replaced by the much more elegant design that human engineers had perfected over the past year. Ambassador, she greeted him warmly. I didn't realize you'd be joining us for the commissioning ceremony. I wouldn't miss it, he replied, especially given my role in recommending your species for the position you now hold. Supreme Commander of Federation Defense Forces, the Admiral acknowledged. Some council members still question the wisdom of placing humans in charge of military operations so soon after our quarantine was lifted. Those council members haven't spent as much time studying your history as I have, Cathraz observed. Or they'd understand that humans are at their best when given responsibility for protecting others. It channels your more aggressive tendencies in productive directions. The Admiral laughed. You've become quite the expert on human psychology, Ambassador. Professional necessity. My next assignment is governor of the new joint species colony at Proxima Centauri. Really? That's ironic? Yes. The site of one of humanity's most famous military engagements, now to become a symbol of cooperative colonization efforts. His mandibles clicked in amusement. The Council has a certain appreciation for historical symmetry, and for testing whether humans and Cathrazi can work together on a sustained basis. The Admiral added shrewdly. That too. They stood in companionable silence, watching the impressive display of Federation unity outside the viewport. Finally, Cathraz spoke again, his tone more serious. There's something I've been meaning to ask you, Admiral. Something that has puzzled xenobiologists throughout the Federation for centuries. I'm intrigued. Your species evolved on a planet with hundreds of apex predators far more physically imposing than yourselves. You had no natural weapons to speak of, no claws, minimal physical strength compared to your competitors, no venom, no armor. That's correct? By all evolutionary logic, you should have remained minor prey animals, perhaps developing greater stealth or speed to avoid predation. Instead, you became the dominant species on your planet. How? The Admiral considered the question carefully. There are many scientific theories. Our endurance, our social cooperation, our tool use, our capacity for abstract thought. But what do you believe was the crucial factor? She smiled slightly. If I had to identify a single trait that defined humanity's rise from vulnerable prey to galactic concern, it would be our absolute refusal to accept the role nature assigned us. Elaborate, Cathraz encouraged. Every other species on Earth adapted to their ecological niche. Predators became more efficient hunters. Prey developed better defenses or escape mechanisms. They all played by the evolutionary rules. Her eyes took on a distant look. Humans simply refused. We weren't strong enough. We made tools that multiplied our strength. We weren't fast enough. We domesticated animals that could run down any prey. We couldn't fly. We built machines that could soar higher than any bird. You rejected the limitations of biology itself, Cathraz realized. Exactly. And we've been doing it ever since. Can't breathe in space? Build spacecraft. Can't survive on Mars? Terraform it. Can't communicate faster than light? Invent quantum entanglement technology. She gestured toward the assembled fleet outside. Can't defeat a superior alien force alone? Build alliances, create a federation, make friends who'll stand with you. That's why you're the galaxy's most terrifying warrior species, Cathraz said softly. Not because of what you are, but because you refuse to accept what you are not. I prefer to think of it as humanity's greatest gift, the Admiral countered. That same refusal to accept limitations applies to everything, including peace, cooperation, and the building of a better galaxy. If we're going to be stubborn about anything, let it be that. An alert chimed, indicating that the commissioning ceremony was about to begin. As they turned to leave the observation deck, Cathraz offered one final observation. Do you know what the Cathrazi call humans in our native language? The translation is roughly, the ones who do not know their place. The Admiral laughed. That's remarkably accurate. It was meant as criticism when first coined, Cathraz admitted. But I've come to see it as your species' greatest strength. You don't know your place, because you refuse to believe you have one. The universe is not a set of boundaries to you, but a set of challenges. And now those challenges are ours to face together, the Admiral said, gesturing toward the ceremony hall where representatives of nearly 300 species waited to celebrate the new era of cooperation. Together, Cathraz agreed, though I suspect humanity will still lead the charge, as always. Someone has to go first, the Admiral shrugged. Might as well be the species too stubborn to know when to quit. As they entered the grand hall filled with the diverse representatives of galactic civilization, Cathraz found himself profoundly grateful that humanity had chosen to be the Federation's ally rather than its enemy. Because if there was one lesson that every species would eventually learn about these strange, persistent, contradictory beings from Earth, it was this. They might not be the strongest, the fastest, or the most naturally gifted species in the galaxy, but they were absolutely, unquestionably, the most determined to succeed regardless of the odds. And in the grand cosmic calculus of survival, that made all the difference. And,